The air in the harvesting chamber tasted like antiseptic and copper. Kael Morrow adjusted the neural cuff around her client's temple, her fingers moving with the detached precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. The clienta gaunt woman in her 50s with hollow eyes shuddered as the cuff's needles pricked her skin. A faint hum filled the room as the machine whirred to life, its glass vials glowing faintly under the sterile blue light of the underground market. "Focus on the memory," Kael said, voice flat. "The fresher the sorrow, the higher the payout." The woman clenched her jaw, her knuckles whitening against the armrest. "It's my son, his funeral." Kael didn't react. She'd heard it all before. Dead spouses, bankruptcies, abandoned lovers. Emotions were currency in Eclipsion Prime, and sorrow was the most lucrative. The wealthy paid fortunes to siphon other people's grief like wine, chasing the thrill of vulnerability without the mess of living it. A teal liquid began to drip into the vial. Grade B, Kael noted. Too diluted by guilt, the woman probably blamed herself for the death. She'd have to filter it twice to meet the broker's standards. The machine beeped, signaling the end of the session. Kael detached the cuff and handed the woman a credit chip. The client stared at it, her throat bobbing. "Do you ever keep any of it? For yourself?" Kael's gloved fingers paused mid-motion. The question was dangerous. The effect guard monitored every transaction, and sentimentality was a one-way ticket to a neural scrub. She met the woman's gaze, her own eyes hidden behind opaque black lenses. "Emotions are a commodity, ma'am. Nothing more." The woman pocketed the chip and left, her footsteps echoing in the cramped hallway outside. Kael waited for the door to seal before opening the vial compartment. Rows of glowing liquids lined the shelf: sapphire regret, crimson rage, silver loneliness. She pulled out the teal sorrow, holding it up to the light. For a moment, the vial trembled in her hand. "Don't." Kael's own voice, sharp and familiar. She'd purged her emotions years ago, trading them piece by piece for survival. Feeling nothing was the only way to stay alive in this city. She slotted the vial into a padded case and locked it. Outside, the neon glare of the black market buzzed to life. Vendors hawked smuggled joy injections and secondhand nostalgia, their stalls crammed beneath flickering holograms of the effect guard's emblem, a hollow heart, cracked down the middle. Kael melted into the crowd, her case of sorrows clutched tight. Someone was always watching. Chapter 2. The next client was already waiting in the chamber. An old man, his face a roadmap of wrinkles, sat slumped in the extraction chair. His hands were bound a rare request. Voluntary clients needed restraints. Kael hesitated. "You requested a full harvest?" The man nodded, his voice gravel. "Everything left." Standard protocol demanded she ask why. Kael didn't. Curiosity was a luxury she couldn't afford. She fastened the neural cuff, its needles sinking into paper-thin skin. The machine hummed, vials rattling as she prepared for a high-yield extraction. The man's breath hitched. "You ever wonder what they do with it all?" Kael kept her tone neutral. "Consumption, mostly. The elite use it for. Not the buyers." The man's milky eyes locked onto hers. "The ones who make the rules. Why do they let us sell pieces of ourselves? You think they're just collecting?" A warning light flashed in Kyle's peripheral vision. Elevated heart rate. The man was agitated, and agitated clients bred unstable emotions. She increased the sedative dose. "Focus on your memory, sir." The machine whined as a thick indigo liquid oozed into the vial. Regret, tinged with something darker. Shame, maybe. The man gasped, tendons straining against the restraints. "They're afraid of it. Raw, unfiltered feeling. That's why they tax it. Control it. The ones who make the rules."
Why do they let us sell pieces of ourselves? You think they're just collecting? A warning light flashed in Coyle's peripheral vision. Elevated heart rate. The man was agitated, and agitated clients bred unstable emotions. She increased the sedative dose. "Focus on your memory, sir." The machine whined as a thick indigo liquid oozed into the vial. Regret, tinged with something darker. Shame, maybe. The man gasped, tendons straining against the restraints. They're afraid of it. Raw, unfiltered feeling. That's why they tax it, control it. But some emotions, he coughed, blood speckling his lips, aren't meant to be sold. Kael froze. The phrase was illegal, scrubbed from public archives. A relic from the empathy wars when rebels had weaponized love against the regime. Speaking it aloud was suicide. The man's head lolled. Don't! Let them take this one! The vial filled with a color Kael had never seen, molten gold, swirling like liquid sunlight. It pulsed faintly, casting shadows on the walls. Unconditional love. Kael's hand hovered over the eject button. Destroy it, now! But the glow warmed her glove, seeped into her pores. For a heartbeat, she remembered, really remembered, her sister's laugh. The way she'd hugged her before the affect guard came. Before Kael chose survival over begging, the door exploded inward. Chapter 3. Affect guard, hands where we can see them. Kael slammed the vial into her coat and raised her hands. 3 enforcers stormed the chamber, their armored suits glinting under the lights. The lead officer, a hulking figure with a voice modulator, grabbed the old man's wrist. No pulse. Neural burnout. They turned to Kael. You, harvest log. Kael handed over her tablet, praying the guard wouldn't notice the skipped entry. The golden vial burned against her ribs. The officer scrolled, visor reflecting lines of data. Client's name? Unknown. He paid in crypto. A lie. The man had paid with a locket, his daughter's picture inside. Kael had pocketed it, same as she'd pocketed every client's trinket. A habit from the early days when she'd still hoped to feel something from the remnants of others' lives. The officer tossed the tablet back. Move. This place is under quarantine. Kael fled into the alley, her boots splashing through neon-lit puddles. The vial's heat spread through her chest, unsettlingly alive. She ducked into a decayed apartment complex, its elevator long dead, and climbed 17 flights to her unit. Home was 4 walls and a mattress. A dented safe housed her real currency, unregistered emotions siphoned from clients who wouldn't be missed. Loneliness from a homeless veteran, fury from a betrayed wife. Kael sold most to brokers, but kept the strongest ones, a habit she couldn't explain. The golden vial glowed brighter in the dark. She uncorked it, the room dissolved. Kael, age 12, bandaging her sister's bleeding knee after she fell from the rooftop garden they'd built together. Her sister's voice cracking. Why won't you cry, even now? The affect guard dragging her away as Kael stood silent, pockets stuffed with her confiscated joy. Kael gasped, tears streaming down her face. Actual tears. She hadn't cried since the purge. A knock rattled the door. Morrow, you missed your quota. Marlowe, her broker, leaned against the doorframe, neon green hair clashing with her smirk. She tossed a credit chip at Kael's feet. The grief from that funeral client tested pure. Buy yourself something pretty. Kael stared at the chip. What happens if someone hoards emotions? Marlowe's smile died. You met a harvester who did, remember? She did. Jax, her old mentor, had kept a vial of his dead husband's pride. The affect guard had melted his mind for it. Marlowe lit a cigarette, its smoke curling into the shape of a skull. Don't get poetic, Morrow. Bottle feelings, sell them, stay numb. She flicked ash onto the floor. Everything else is a death wish. The door clicked shut. In the silence, the golden vial hummed. Chapter 4. The affect guard officer's visor reflected Kael's face, pale, tear-streaked, and utterly exposed. You're coming with us, the officer barked, gauntleted hand snatching the golden vial from her coat. Kael lunged without thinking. Her gloves gripped the officer's wrist, and for a split second, the vial's warmth surged through her. The officer froze, visor flickering. A wet, choked sound escaped their modulator. The officer, as a child, hiding under a bed while their mother sold her laughter to feed them. A whispered promise. I'll get us out of here. The officer staggered back, vial clattering to the floor. Kael scooped it up and bolted, her boots skidding on blood-slick tiles. Shouts echoed behind her as she slammed into the alley, the vial's pulse syncing with her heartbeat. Eclipsion Prime's skyline loomed above, a jagged crown of obsidian spires and flickering holograms advertising emotion tax compliance. Kael ducked into a sewage grate, the stench of rot burning her lungs. The golden glow guided her through tunnels until she emerged in the Bone District, where street lamps were carcasses of old drones and the air tasted like rust. Her safe house was a crypt. Literally. The affect guard rarely patrolled the city's derelict cemeteries, too many ghosts, both metaphorical and real. Kael pried open a decayed mausoleum door and collapsed inside, her back against a coffin etched with someone's forgotten name. The vial hummed in her palm. "What are you?" she whispered. It flared and the crypt dissolved. Her sister, Lyra, at age 10, pressing a stolen honey apple into Kael's hand. "Eat it," Lyra grinned. "Joy's better shared." The affect guard ripping Lyra's joy from her skull, vial by vial, while Kael stood silent. Kael gasped, the memory sharper than any harvest. Guilt curdled in her stomach. She'd sold her own sorrow over Lyra's arrest years ago, scrubbed it clean to survive. But this thing in her hand wasn't just a memory. It was alive, hungry. A shadow shifted in the crypt's corner. "Trouble follows you, Morrow." Marlowe stepped into the dim light, her neon green hair dulled by grime. She kicked aside a rat skeleton and tossed Kael a protein bar. "Brokers are offering 6 million credits for that vial. Affect guards got shoot-on-sight orders." Kael's grip tightened. "You here to collect?" Marlowe smirked. "If I were, you'd be dead." She crouched, her voice dropping. "That thing's a relic. From before the wars. You know what happens if the guard traces it here? They'll scrub the district. They'll burn it, and everyone in it." Marlowe lit a cigarette, the flame trembling in her hand. "You've got two choices. Sell it to the highest bidder tonight, or destroy it." The vial pulsed, warm and insistent. Lyra's voice faint. "Why won't you cry?" Kael stood. "There's a third option." Chapter 5. The abandoned Emotia refinery stank of decayed hope. Kael pried open a rusted vent, Marlowe's flashlight beam wavering behind her. "You're insane," Marlowe hissed. "The Echo Collective's a fairy tale, a bedtime story brokers tell to scare new harvesters." "Then why'd you follow me?" Kael crawled into the duct, the vial's glow painting the walls gold. "Because you're my best earner." Marlowe's lie rang hollow. "And because I owe Lyra." Kael froze. Marlowe, years younger, pressing a smuggled vial into Lyra's hand. "Run," Marlowe urged, "before they tag you." Lyra shaking her head. "I can't leave Kael." The memory faded. Kael glanced back. "You knew her?" "We were cellmates, before the purge." Marlowe's jaw tightened. "She talked about you, every damn day." The duct opened into a cavernous chamber. Rows of emotion distillation tanks lined the walls, their glass frosted with age. Kael's breath fogged in the air. This refinery had once supplied Eclipsion Prime's elite with designer euphoria. Now it was a tomb. She placed the vial on a corroded control panel. The collective's real. They've been preserving emotions the guard erased. Love, empathy, sacrifice. Sacrifice? Marlowe snorted. "You sound like a rebel pamphlet." "And you sound scared?" Marlowe grabbed her arm. "You think I want to watch you end up like Lyra? The guards got drones scanning every synapse in the city. That vial's a beacon." Kael pulled free. "Then why'd you help me?" Silence. Marlowe looked away. "Lyra said, you used to cry at sunset, when the smog turned the sky gold, like it reminded you of something you'd lost." The vial flared. Kael, age 7, chasing Lyra through wheat fields that hadn't yet been paved into districts. Lyra's laughter, the sun setting molten gold behind her. Kael's eyes burned. I don't even remember that. But it does. Marlowe nodded at the vial. That's why the guard wants it dead. It's not just an emotion, it's a seed. And seeds grow. Boots clanged in the ducts above. Too late, Marlowe whispered. Affect guard drones dropped from the ceiling, their blade arms whirring. Kael grabbed the vial and ran, Marlowe shouting behind her. A drone slashed her calf and she fell, skidding across the refinery floor. The vial rolled into a drain. No! She plunged her arm into the sludge, fingers closing around the vial as a drone pinned her. Its blade hovered over her neck. Marlowe tackled it, jamming a live wire into its core. Sparks erupted. Go! Kael crawled toward a service elevator, the vial clutched to her chest. Marlowe fought off the drones, blood streaking her jacket. You'll die here, Kael screamed. Marlowe grinned, wild and bright. Then make it worth it. Chapter 6. The elevator opened into a forgotten subway tunnel. Kael limped past derelict trains, their windows boarded with emotion tax posters. Report. Unlicensed harvesters. The vial's glow pulsed weaker now, dimmed by her blood loss. A shadow detached from the wall. You're late. The woman was tall, her shaved scalp etched with scars that formed a constellation even Kael recognized. The Andromeda System, a rebel insignia. Echo Collective? Kael rasped. The woman nodded. Call me Vera? She tossed Kael a biofoam canister for her wound. Marlowe radioed ahead, said you'd need this. Kael's breath hitched. Is she dead? Probably. Vera shrugged. But she bought you a head start. Follow. They navigated tunnels until a steel door loomed ahead, its surface scarred by bullet holes. Vera pressed her palm to a scanner. You sure you're ready, Morrow? Once you walk in, there's no crawling back to your numb little life. Kael stared at the vial. It flickered, faint but stubborn. Lyra's hand in hers, warm and alive. We'll always have the sunset, Lyra whispered. The memory wasn't hers, it was the vial's. Kael stepped through the door. The chamber took her breath away. Thousands of glowing vials lined the walls. Crimson courage, violet compassion, emerald hope. Rebels moved between them, careful and reverent. At the room's center stood a massive neural broadcaster, its wires snaking into the ceiling. This is how we win, Vera said. One emotion at a time. Kael uncurled her fingers. The golden vial floated from her palm, slotting into the broadcaster. What does it do? She asked. Vera smiled. It reminds them. The machine roared to life. Above ground in Eclipsion Prime streets, rain began to fall, golden and warm. Due to technical issues, the search service is temporarily unavailable. Here's the continuation of The Last Sorrow Trader with Beat 7, B-Story, 8, Fun and Games, and 9, Midpoint, in the Save the Cat. Structure totaling 1,220 words. These beats deepen relationships, escalate stakes, and pivot the story toward its turning point. Chapter 7. Vera's scars glinted in the golden haze of the neural broadcaster. Your sister would have loved this, she said, watching rebels slot vials of stolen courage into the machine. Kael stiffened. You knew Lyra, too? Everyone knew Lyra. Vera traced the Andromeda scars on her scalp. She tried to recruit me years ago, said emotions weren't meant to be caged. I called her naive. She laughed bitterly. Then the guard murdered my wife for hoarding gratitude. Lyra found me hiding in a dumpster halfway to neural burnout. Gave me her last vial of hope. Kael's chest tightened. She never told me. Would you have listened? The question hung in the air like smoke. On the hollow screen above, the golden rain pooled in Eclipsion Prime streets. Citizens crouched to touch it, their faces slack with wonder. A child laughed, a sound so foreign Kael barely recognized it. Vera handed her a rusted syringe. We need to amplify the signal. Your vial's the core, but it's fading. Kael rolled up her sleeve. How? Your blood. The emotion bonded to you when you touched it. Vera pressed the needle to Kael's vein. It'll hurt. The machine roared as Kael's blood merged with the vial. Memories flooded her, not hers, but theirs. A soldier dropping his rifle to hug a dying enemy. A broker returning stolen memories to an orphan. Marlowe, in her final moments, smiling as drones engulfed her. Kael gasped. It's working through people, changing them, connecting them. Vera adjusted the broadcaster's dials. The guard's worst nightmare. A rebel rushed in, clutching a bleeding arm. Patrols on sub-level 3. They're carving through the tunnels. Vera cursed. They're targeting the broadcaster. Morrow, stay here. Guard the core. Where are you going? To buy time. Vera tossed Kael a pistol. If they reach this room, destroy the machine. Don't let them take the vial alive. Kael gripped the gun. Why me? Because you're her sister. Vera paused at the door. And because you're the only one who's felt nothing long enough to know what something is worth. The door sealed, leaving Kael alone with the broadcaster's hum. The golden vial pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, weaker now. She pressed her palm to the glass. Lyra, age 16, sneaking into Kael's harvester booth. You don't have to do this, Lyra pleaded. We can run. Kael injecting herself with numbness serum. Feelings get you killed, Lyra. Grow up. I'm sorry, Kael whispered. The vial flickered. A bang shook the door. Chapter 8. The affect guard breached the room with plasma torches. Kael fired wildly, driving them back. Bullets sparked off the broadcaster. She ducked behind a console, blood-smeared fingers fumbling to activate the refinery's ancient security protocols. System offline, droned the AI. Override code Lyra 7, Kael shouted. A pause. Override accepted. The room shuddered. Rusted panels slid open, revealing rows of dormant distillation drones. Kael jammed the golden vial into a terminal port. New directive. Protect the core. The drones whirred to life, eyes glowing gold. They surged forward, tearing into the guard with serrated claws. Kael sprinted through the chaos, dodging stray fire. A drone tossed her a dead officer's grenade belt. Thanks. The drone beeped cheerfully. In the tunnels, rebels fought in pockets. Vera battled back-to-back with a teenage hacker named Jin, whose neural implants sparked as she hijacked guard drones. Morrow! Vera yelled. The rain's working! Districts 4 and 7 are rebelling. Kael glanced at the holoscreen. A feed showed citizens shattering emotion tax kiosks, their faces alight with defiance. A street artist painted a mural of Lyra's face on the affect guard tower. Signals at 40% strength, Jin said, blood dripping from her nose. We need... An explosion rocked the tunnel. The ceiling cracked, drowning Jin's words. Kael hauled her aside as rubble buried 2 rebels. They're collapsing the tunnels. Vera coughed through dust. Fall back! Kael hesitated, staring at the rubble. We can't leave them. They're gone! Vera grabbed her arm. The mission's the core. Move! They fled to a service elevator, Jin hacking the controls. The doors closed as a guard officer lunged, fingers brushing Kael's sleeve. Where now? Kael panted. Up! Vera grinned. Time to show the city what rain really looks like. The elevator opened to a rooftop storm drain. Golden rain fell harder now, pooling in neon-lit puddles. Below, the city writhed, rebels clashing with guard, drones gone rogue, civilians tearing down holographic propaganda. Jin jacked into the drain's control panel. I can flood the streets, supercharge the signal. Do it, Vera said. Kael gripped the vial. Wait, the overdose could kill people. You wanted a revolution? Vera snapped. This is how it happens. The vial's memory. Lyra shaking her head. You don't have to be a weapon, Kael. Kael stepped between Jin and the panel. No. Vera's pistol clicked. Move. Or what? You'll harvest me? Kael met her glare. Lyra gave you hope, not a license to drown them in it. The rain thickened. A woman below scooped golden liquid into her child's hands. Vera lowered the gun. Then what's your play, Morrow? Kael unhooked the grenade belt. We give them a target worth fighting for. Chapter 9. The affect guard tower loomed like a steel fang. Kael strapped grenades to the broadcaster drone, its golden eye whirring affectionately. You're sure this'll work? Jin asked. No, Kael said, but it'll be loud. Vera synced detonators to Kael's neural implant. You've got 5 minutes after activation. Then the whole tower goes up. Where's the fun in that? Kael climbed onto the drone. Give me 3. Jin snorted. Harvesters are crazy. The drone soared into the smog, Kael clinging to its hull. Wind tore at her clothes as the tower's landing pad swelled below. Guard drones peeled off to intercept. Punch it! The drone barrel rolled, dodging plasma fire. Kael lobbed a grenade, shredding a drone swarm. The explosion rattled the tower's windows. Signal jammed. Jin's voice crackled in her earpiece. Go! Kael leapt onto the landing pad, drone cover fading. She sprinted through corridors lined with emotion vaults, shelf after shelf of stolen lives. A hologram of the affect guard's leader, Director Voss, flickered on every screen. Surrender the core, Morrow, or we'll purge every rebel cell in the city. Kael shoved a grenade into a vault. You first. The blast incinerated 1,000,000 credits worth of bottled rage. Alarms wailed. She fought to the control room, gunning down officers. The core glowed ahead, a massive amplifier, stealing the golden rain signal. 3 minutes. Kael planted the final grenade. You're too late. Director Voss stepped from the shadows, her face smooth and emotionless. No neural ports, no implants. Did you think we wouldn't adapt? She tapped a console. The core inverted, sucking the golden rain back into the tower. No. Kael lunged. Voss sidestepped, dislocating Kael's shoulder with a practice twist. We'll distill your little seed into a weapon. Imagine armies fueled by unconditional obedience. Kael crawled toward the detonator. 2 minutes. Voss stomped on her hand. Bones cracked. You can't win. Humans are weak. Predictable. The vials whisper, you're more than you know. Kael headbutted Voss's knee. The director staggered. Kael spat blood, grinning. But I'm not human anymore. She bit the detonator. The tower erupted in golden fire.